What really happened in the kitchen that night, and who or what did the narrator encounter, leaving their mother denying any involvement? Are you ready to delve into the darkest corners of the unknown? Subscribe now for a chilling journey. She didn't turn around, but she kind of, I don't know, like stiffened a bit, so I took that as my cue to get out and just let her be. Sometimes she just wanted to clean in peace, as she worked with older people, and many would die on her watch. My mom is a dedicated nurse when it comes to her patients, because she worked in a rehabilitation center. Many of these patients would get dropped off by their families and literally never see them again. She would often take us to see them when she could, so that they could feel like someone cared for them. So still no alarms went off as I walked back towards the stairs, as I assumed someone may have died, and she was sad and wanted to just be left alone. When I hit the corner to round and gar the stairs, though everything in the kitchen just shut off at once. The radio, the sink, the lights, all of it. Man! When I tell you that I ran up those stairs to my room, I was gone, zoomed past my brother's and parents' room, and ran into mine, slammed my door shut, and jumped under the covers. I was thinking at the time that this is the end. My parents are big horror fans and they didn't believe in shielding us from stuff like that, because they wanted us to understand the difference in what was real and what was not, and that no matter what, God is there and He'll protect us and all that. And I can tell you that. But I did not feel God. That night I suddenly hear my door burst open though, and my mom yells at me for running up the stairs, thinking that I'd gone and grabbed candy or something and run up the stairs to avoid her. I said no, Mom, you scared me when you turned everything off, and she was like, what are you talking about? And I tell her what just happened. She tells me that I must have dreamed it up, and quickly tucks me into bed, and she just closes my door now the next day. I asked her why she would do that to me, when she knows that I'm scared of the dark like that. I truly thought that she just thought it wasn't as funny to me when she saw how scared I was or something, and tucked me in to calm me down. She then tells me, though, that she was apparently in her room. She had gotten home, took off her shoes and went straight to her room that night. She never went into the kitchen, never heard me go down the stairs, but instead assumed that my brothers had left me down there because I fell asleep, as they used to do it, knowing that I was scared of the dark and thought that it was funny. When I ask her about it now, she only vaguely remembers this happening. My brothers had bad experiences in this house, though, as well, and they actually believed me. The common factor that I find in our stories is that they all had to do with downstairs, for whatever reason. None of us ever had scary stuff happen upstairs, but generally agree that something was weird about that kitchen and the fireplace too. The stories always seem to include one of both of those two things, and to this day I still don't know who or what I spoke to that night. Now that I am a 23-year-old female and back from Germany, I've had some time to think over the events of my trip, but it's hard to think positively, considering what happened to me the last night in Stuttgart, and I'd like a place to talk about it. So here I am now. I'd spent about 2 weeks traveling Germany for the Euros, and considering how many fellow Scotland fans were over for the games, I never felt completely alone, despite being a solo traveler in a foreign country. I guess I became too naive, and how I trusted the older groups of Scots, who'd buy me drinks and chat with me all night about where they from, who they knew, etc. Just typical Scottish chats, I guess. But I let my guard down. You see, that last night in Stuttgart happened like most other nights in Germany. I'd be by myself, and would get noticed by a group of older men or women who'd inquire as to who I was with. When they heard I was alone, they remarked how brave I was as a good-looking lassie being here all by myself. I'd then be integrated into the group, drink with them, celebrate with them, and that night cry with them over Scotland's loss. Determined to enjoy my last night, though, I said goodbye to my new friends and donned on a short white dress draped in my Scotland flag, and went out looking for a good place to drink and dance with strangers that I'd never meet again. I met a few people that night, but it was while I was alone that I met him. That bag's bigger than you are, I heard, as a jolly older man wandered over to me. It was true. I had my rucksack with me that night. Where's your boyfriend to carry it for you? Not sure yet, still deciding if he's going to be German or Scottish, I quipped back with a smile. Most of my interactions would start this way, with a friendly interaction, resulting in an offer to come drink with the group, and after offering to take me to a nearby Irish pub to drink with him and his family, I graciously accepted and we began walking. He was overly exaggerating how inconceivable he thought that I was for doing this alone, bowing to me and excitedly telling passers by how I was myself and how brave it was. I would sort of smile awkwardly and change the subject. I wish that I could say alarm bells were ringing, but honestly they weren't. After all, he was just a wee Scottish grandpa, one of many that I'd met that night. He began prodding me on if I had somewhere to sleep tonight, remarking how they had room in their hotel. If need be, I wouldn't force myself on you or anything. I froze at that. It was very unexpected. I truly looked at him for the first time since I had met him. He was a relatively short man, taller than me still, but with a larger build and wrinkles to match the white hair that was poking out from under his Scotland cap. He began quickly explaining how he knows that I'd be cautious about that sort of thing, being a smart girl, that I could trust him, but again reiterated that he wouldn't force himself on me. I sort of laughed nervously, as all the beer that I drank earlier seemed to drain from my body, and I began taking in my surroundings. Where did you say your family were again? Just in the Irish pub up this hill. So, like I was saying, I didn't really pay attention to him. We were still on the populated main street of Stuttgart, but the numbers were dwindling the further that we went. My ears suddenly pinged in a hurt to my brain, signaling that I just missed something important, or perhaps horrifying. So I mustered up a smile and politely asked, sorry, what did you just say? That I'm a vegetarian, because I killed my 44th man in a vegetable field? Oh, I've been deployed in loads of countries. The first 6 lives I took were in Ireland. In fact, my blood ran cold. I'm a descendant of Irish immigrants who fled to Scotland to escape the brutality of the Troubles in Ireland, and I mean, did this man kill my family? Yeah, I killed 12 in Iraq. I could only listen to parts of his ramblings, as I began desperately planning my escape, locking eyes with every person that walked past. There weren't many. We had almost reached the top of the main street. Now why are you so tense? All of a sudden, the words brought me back to the conversation. You know I can read you like a book, right? I am doing all of this for you. You see, I want to protect you, and Molly, I can guarantee you right now you don't realize how much danger you're in. You know, I felt a gentle tap on my shoulder, spinning around to see a young German man smiling at me. Scotland. He motioned to my flag. I love Scotland. Hey, is there anywhere to eat around here? I blurted out, staring at him, praying that I'd turn around and the old man would be gone. Brief confusion crossed the German's face before the old man began rapidly jumbling up the sentence "Sprende doch," in an attempt to sound as if he was speaking German. Essen. I whispered. The young man pointed in the direction that we just walked from. Yeah, there's a McDonald's down there. I turned back to the old man, whose look I could only describe as emotionless. Now, as if he was staring right through me like I was no longer there. I felt another cold shiver before smiling. Hey, I'm going to go grab something to eat, but I'll meet you in the Irish pub later. Okay, as if snapping back to his jolly self, the man quipped. Now don't be like that. I'm off to a rave just now. I'm playing at it. You don't want to miss it. I'll catch you later. I smiled. The man's face again dropped into a blank stare, before he turned and walked off. I think the German man called after me, but I didn't hear him. I kept my head down and walked wherever my feet wanted to take me. I couldn't think, I could only walk. I really don't know how I got to the train station, nor how I got to the hostel, and weirdly there were no Irish pubs in Stuttgart, or at least not in that direction. In any case, to all solo female travelers, never say that you're traveling alone, and to the German man that I met that night. Thank you for potentially saving my butt. I'm a 19-year-old female, and I was out to eat with my boyfriend, and the place that we were eating at has a live show right next door. We decided to listen outside to some of the bands playing once we were done eating. It must have been around 9:00 p.m. At this point, shortly after going outside, this girl come up to me and starts talking to me about all kinds of things. She has bright red hair, many piercings and tattoos. The first thing that she did was compliment what we were wearing. And I mean, I wasn't wearing anything special, a plain pink dress with Crocs. She seemed very friendly, though, and continued on a conversation with us, mainly me, though I figured it's because I have piercings in a tattoo. Maybe that's why I also kind of chalked it up to her being drunk, or just being overly friendly, and eventually she asked me a weird question that I didn't really understand and can't recall exactly. But it was something along the lines of "What's your purpose here?" or something like that. I just remember not understanding what she was asking me and just telling her where I worked, because it sounded like that's what she was asking me about. She said that she works at the strip club in the same town and came to dance. She then left abruptly afterward while texting on her phone and went over to this guy, me and my boyfriend. We went to leave. At this point I didn't think too much of it, and we passed by them. After turning the corner, though, my boyfriend told me to check and see if I was being followed. I looked behind my shoulder and didn't see anybody. I walked a little further and looked back again, and then there was this guy. He was walking extremely quick. Men caught up to us pretty fast. He followed me all the way to my car, which was at least a mile away, until we got in and locked the doors. He was only a couple of feet away from my car, but then he just turned around and went back the way that he went. My boyfriend told me to start the car ASAP, and once we left he told me that when we passed by them, he heard the girl say to the guy something along the lines of "she's a little nervous," and he had a bad vibe, that they were traffickers, or that they were going to try and pimp me out or something, maybe snatch me up or something, I don't know. But it wouldn't have been very hard for him to do that. He was easily at least double my weight, as I'm only 100 pounds. He was following with a lot of speed too, and I mean, really, what else could be the motive? I don't know. The whole thing creeped me out a lot, and I'm really glad that my boyfriend was there. I still feel extremely confused. Honestly, it was 2017, so quite a few years ago at this point, but I still to this day cannot wrap my head around it. I was about 11, maybe 12 at the time, 19 now. It was around 7:40 in the morning and the sun was out and shining bright on a weekday. My mom and I were driving to school when, just a minute past by my house, we were coming up to the railroad tracks, which we did every day except this morning. We saw a man walking. I didn't think too much of it, except that it was odd that he was wearing all black jeans, black zip-up hoodie, black shoes. He was bent over, seemingly when we were just starting to see the figure, and then it stood up and I think it had hands in its pockets. He was walking on the left side of the road off onto some grass, with his hoodie up over his head. He began to walk, but as we got close, he whipped his head around and looked at us. I expected to see a guy's face, but instead I saw nothing but pure blackness, darkness, a shadow where a face should be. I was staring in disbelief. The thing seemed to be scared oddly and began running. I have no idea why even then I was so confused, but it ran for a few seconds, which seemed like a while to be seeing what I was seeing, and then it just slid down onto the grass on its butt and leaned on its right side and hopped off like it would on a ledge. Mom kept driving slowly, and we watched the figure disappear just into the ground. We both stared at the place where it went and it was just gone. A second later, as we finally began to go over the tracks, I yelled Mom, and she looked over at me and just said I don't know and asked if she saw it. And she just said yeah, I saw it, and then we both just sat there. I guess thinking in this experience I didn't feel threatened or anything. I didn't feel like it was planning to harm us, but it was so confusing. Why did it not have a face? Why did it run like that? Why did it act like we weren't supposed to be able to see it either? Why did it go into the ground like that? Why was it wearing such stereotypical stalker, or robber, or scary man clothes? Does it mean hell is real? Did it go there? Was it a demon? I've never even been a believer in the paranormal. I've always rejected the idea of God or religion in general, and I still can't get into that sort of stuff. As time went on, though, I kind of ignored this memory. I guess I ignored how it affected me. I now recently have been thinking about it again, and I just cannot wrap my head around it. I know that I'm not crazy, because my mom saw it too and can describe it the same as I do. I just can't comprehend how it was real, but it was just as real as any other person walking on the street. I don't know why I'm sharing this. To be honest, I just need someone to relate to about this. I guess I've been feeling emotional about it lately, so is there anyone out there who can maybe help me understand this? Anyone else experience something similar? I've been to the spot multiple times since then, and I've never seen anything again. I haven't seen anything paranormal, since in fact I don't know what to think about any of this, and it means a lot to me to not feel so alone and confused in this experience, and sometimes life in general. I guess I just don't know how to process there being other things like this. When I was 11, we first moved to California near the Use area, lots of forest and small lakes near where I lived. I moved right around when summer was ending and school was starting, so I took a bit to get settled and used to everything. Summer rolled around the next year. My family is pushing me to get out of the house and do something besides staying inside and playing games all day. There was a lake with lots of dirt paths and such that was easy to explore. So I'd go around there a bit and just walk around, especially this one spot that had a cool little waterfall into a smaller lake from the bigger lake of that area. And well, one of those days I'm walking to the lake and I spot someone by the waterfall. She's a girl around maybe my age, orange hair, freckles and an accent that I wasn't able to understand at the time, which I think was a Tennessee accent. I've always been horrible with names, but I remember her name being a very common one, something like Alice or Cassie or something like that. As a young kid, I never really had crushes on girls. Most of the time if I was friends with someone, then, being a guy or a girl, it didn't really change much in how I interacted with them, and she was definitely the same way, because we immediately got along. I remember us going to the lake and just walking around a lot. I talked a lot about living in Washington, what school was like and video games. Something that could tell went right over her head. She said that she was visiting her grandma over the summer at a house down the road from mine. I remember I had her number saved, so I'd text her whenever I was planning to go on a walk, and she'd meet me at the end of the driveway of the house that she was at. I remember her saying her grandma didn't want her going to my place, which was understandable. I mean, I'm a stranger to this woman and so would my family be, but Alice didn't want me to come visit the grandma either, which I remember finding a bit weird. I remember my friend Eric, who lived near the lake, would always come by and wanted to come with me to walk around, and Alice told me that she'd rather it just be the two of us. Maybe it was because she didn't know him, but she would only come with me on those walks alone. I remember one time, we walked out a bit further than usual on one of those dirt paths. This one was a bit awkward because of a hidden incline on this hill, and she'd have to pull me up for us to walk around and jump down when we walked back anyway. Cut to near the end of summer, and she's still hanging out with me, even meeting me at the end of my driveway. I remember one time, I was having trouble finding my jean, so I didn't get cut by the bushes that we walked past all the time, and told my mom, before she went to work, to tell Alice that I was going to be a little bit late. I'll explain in a bit why this is important as well, but on our last day walking around we went to the rock that kind of overlooked the lake, and we just kind of sat there. I remember she was talking about her family, and how much she preferred being there in California than where she was from. Something I don't remember, though, is if she ever told me specifically or not, and well, I said bye to her, and said that I'd try to meet her at her house before she took off. I never did. I think I was forced to go school shopping or something that day, so I sent her a text telling her, and she didn't seem upset or anything. I don't know if I just never checked in with her or I had forgotten her, but I never saved her contact. It was on an old flip phone that my parents had given me at the time when I was that young, and they didn't have a good texting or calling plan at the time anyway. Cut to a good while later, 2021. A lot of drama is happening in my family, which I won't get into, but topics about my childhood and how I was treated of being brought up. I asked my mom about that year being forced to go outside more, and if that was her decision, or my father's. Spoilers, it was my father's. I brought up how it wasn't that bad though, and that I had Alice to hang out with, and that sparked a bit of a nostalgic happiness that I hadn't felt in a while, thanks to how bad that in the previous year was for us. Well, my mom then dropped and would tell me something that I continue to think back on over and over again. You mean that imaginary girl you walked around the lake with? I immediately thought that she was just messing with me, but she looked serious and thought that the time that I asked her to tell Alice that I was going to take a while, that I was talking about an imaginary friend, because she claimed that she never saw anyone when she went down the driveway. Apparently, but I know that I had interacted with this girl. I know that I had gone with her to this lake many times, but I never thought about how I was the only person who ever saw her. Never my friend Eric or his brother, who sometimes went to the lake with me. Not my family, never even met her grandmother as well. Today I cannot even confirm if I ever had this girl's number or if I ever even actually texted her. It threw me off a good bit, but then I remembered one thing that made me know that I was right and that she was real. You see, one time in July, when I was walking with Alice to the lake, my grandma had stopped by to give me a soda while she was heading to my house to give my dad something. Well, when I had next talked to my grandma, I brought it up, and she didn't really know what I was talking about at first, not until I brought up Alice. Oh yes, I remember your dad always brought up how you and some girl would walk around the lake, and I thought it was cute, weird that he thought it was a real girl, and not one of your imaginary friends. This absolutely rocked me to the core. I mean, there's just no way that I imagined all of this, and I still have no idea what she could mean by one of my imaginary friends. If I ever find that old phone, if I even still have it in a box somewhere, I'm getting to the bottom of this, because I am certain that she was real. Otherwise, who the heck have I been imagining this whole time? Out back of my neck of the woods is an old dirt road. It's hard to access unless you know how to take a turn down another old road that runs around the back of the coal mine that I work at. If you follow that old road, you get to a T intersection that you can either turn right out to Hale Creek or left, which will take you out to Mount Coolon. Now Mount Coolon isn't much of a town anymore. It's an outback pub, and that's pretty much it. There used to once be a town there, but everyone up and left once the railway line got moved to the coast. That was the only reason the town existed for so long, in fact, or for as long as it did. Anyway, it wasn't the start of the town, though. You see, way back in the early 1900s, gold was found in them by a prospector named Thomas Coolon. He staked his claim and settled there with his family. Some local Aboriginals found him and his family living on their land and weren't too happy about it, so they attacked his home, throwing rocks through the windows and generally antagonizing him. Well, Thomas went out and shot the lot of them all dead. Then, in a fit of grief over what he had done, sat down on his porch, and deleted himself all over the wall behind him. Fast forward to the year 2021. I was working out at Hale Creek Mine at the time on the maintenance crew. I had a big 7 nights of 12-hour shifts and had very little sleep. I had left my mining camp the following afternoon, still not feeling the best, but set out for a long drive back home to Moran. But dusk came along. Then nightfall. I was driving for what seemed like forever trying to make my way back home. I was constantly looking out for the turnoff on the old back road that ran up behind GL Mine, but it never came. I kept on driving and driving, hours went by. I was on very unfamiliar road. At this point it started to bend and twist and turn all over and narrow to the point that my little Kia Rio could barely get by without scratching the sides on branches of old looming trees hanging over the road. I was definitely lost, so I pulled over to check my Google Maps. No signal. Of course I was really confused, though did I miss the tone? I thought maybe it's a little further up, so I pressed on and kept driving. Then out of nowhere, I see an old and worn sign off to the left of me, on the side of the old dirt road, Mount Coulon, 15 kilometers. I thought, okay, yep, I've gone way too far out in the sticks here. I better turn around. Before I could, though, I saw off to my right the entrance to what looked like a cemetery, with an old and rusty archway, and above on the archway it was in this rusty rough iron lettering Betsy's Rest. Oh, my curiosity got the better of me, so I veered in there to have myself a quick squiz, and sure as heck. There was a road that went into a giant U-shape around an old cemetery full of tombstones, generations of cattle farmers and jackaroos, who all must have worked on the various stations in the area, and it gave me the spooks pretty bad. So I got out of there quickly, and made my way back onto the old back road. I kept heading back from whence I came, hoping and praying that I'll find this T intersection eventually. Over an hour passed and then my worst fear happened. The fuel light flickered on my dashboard. I'm driving on this road in absolutely the middle of nowhere. It's now midnight. No one will probably find me for days if I ran out of fuel. I was absolutely beside myself. This is the outback of Australia. You run out of water, food and the outback. You may have just signed your own death certificate, pretty much done and dusted. In fact, all I had was a couple of sandwiches that I took from the camp Ms. Hall, and a bottle of water. Better than nothing, I suppose, but not enough to last a couple of days stranded on the side of an old back roo with no phone signal. So I keep cruising along, being extremely careful not to go too quickly, or over-accelerator, and all the twists and the turns. As I'm driving along this lonely road, I then see a shadow out of the corner of my eye. I don't think too much of it, staying focused on the road ahead, looking for this turn-off. But then that's when I hear it swooping and sort of whoosing noises above my car, and what the heck, right? I then look up and see what I can only describe as a giant bat creature with red eyes flying directly above my car. It obviously startles me and makes me accelerate at a rapid rate, yet it's flying overhead, gliding effortlessly and keeping in pace with me. I'm watching my speedometer reaching neck-breaking speeds, and I'm bouncing all over the old and bumpy road. While this creature glides down to my driver's side window, looks inside at me and then just grimaces. Then, just as it does, it flies up and just disappears into the night air as quickly as it had appeared. I floored that old clunker of a car of mine until my heart leapt with joy at the sign of life. In that desolate hellscape, I saw the Jella Mine CHP's light cut through the vast and empty void of darkness. I knew then and there that I was within 10 to 15 kilometers of the intersection and the turn-off back home, and thankfully I found it. I eventually managed to get all the way back home, and I was very grateful that my clunker ran on an oily rag and the vapors in my tank pretty much kept me alive. I told my partner at the time all about the nightmare that I had been through, as she had been expecting me home the evening prior, and it was now 6:00 in the morning. My phone was full of missed calls from her, for which I apologized profusely. I hadn't even thought to check my phone, as I had no signal for the better part of the entire journey anyway. And while this was a pretty scary experience, the experience that I had with my partner when I convinced ourselves to drive all the way out there one night was perhaps even worse. It was just to see the actual town, but months had passed and I kept having recurring nightmares about that vile weird creature. It seemed to have entered my dreams. At this point I awoke one night sweating in bed. My heart rate was racing. My partner asked what's wrong again. I had been waking her up late at night, when I would have this horrible nightmare. The whole situation had really impacted me. The desolate hellscape would re-emerge in the dark nights plagued by the old outback road, menacing my demise with the off chance that I would make one wrong move and come undone escaping that creature. Something had to be done, and I knew what I needed to do. You see, I'm a man that will openly admit that I cannot overcome anything in life unless I face it head-on. That's really the only way that I know you sticking your head in the sand and pretending things will just go away. So I spoke with my partner, and after much discussion, we both agreed that we would go back and investigate the back road at Mount Coulon, and investigate the town itself, and to really drive the nail in. We were going to do it at night as well. I just needed answers. I guess I needed to know what lay at the end of that old road, and whatever else I may have missed on my first misadventure. We set out at 6:30 p.m. and headed for the old back road, which now is inaccessible. You can go take a look for yourself, but the mine has shut the gate as it runs along the inside of the mine's boundary. Anyway, we were driving my partner, at the time's new Mitsubishi Mirage. It was a real beast of a car. I guess you could say, but it had all the kit that we needed for the long drive, and we made sure that we left prepared SE full of food, water and snacks, my tool kit in case of a breakdown, torches, first aid kit, two-way radio battery pack for phones, and the two-way radio on my trusty hunting knife which I kept in my side door compartment. I mean, as if I was going out there again completely unarmed with who knows what was out there in the dark. But the first Lego of our adventure was actually rather fun. I felt a bit like Colin McRae taking the old dirt road and twisted and turned in all directions, slithering my way up to the T intersection. Once we got to the intersection, I took the left turn to head north and gradually west. The familiar road was, as it was the same night that I encountered the strange flying beast, except a night brought a slight amount of comfort, as there was a full moon in the night sky, illuminating the surrounding and edges of the road. As we approached the old cemetery, I told my partner to look right. She was honestly in awe as well. I asked if she wanted to go take a look, but she was too nervous about it. So I just kept on driving along. As the night went on, we came to the point of no return. The road became nothing more than just a dirt track, interspersed with sealed sections that the local farmers had laid prior to and after, crossing old relics of bridges. But they were rusty and wrought iron, sturdy still, but foreboding at the same time. We crossed two of them on one stretch, one built over the coalfields railway line heading eastward to the port. Another was over a deep ravine. The bottom was clouded by dense native plants. The road got very narrow at one point and snaked right and left and down and up. We were in unfamiliar territory now, and I was growing apprehensive about what I would see or find. At one point, though, I could have swore that there was just no road at all. We were basically driving through a wide open field, and I had to drive at 40 kilometers an hour max to avoid any ruts or depressions in the bull dust. I was starting to think this entire trip might have been a mistake. When the road then came good again to a compacted dirt section, a random sign appeared off to the right of the road stating that we were now deep in Aboriginal land. The drive went on and on and on. Hours seemed to have passed. Were we any closer to our destination? For reference, I switched the car's function from Bluetooth headset to radio, scan the FM and AM for any signs of life, but there was nothing. I thought, well, I'll check again in an hour, and an hour at pass. So I checked, scanning, and then there was a muffled and distorted voice emitting through our car all of a sudden, and then the sweet sound of music, ironically enough as well. It was actually AC/DC's Highway to Hell. How befitting, I thought to myself. I said to my partner, hey, check the signal on your phone now. She replied with 2 bars. She immediately checked Google Maps. I parked the car in this small spot of salvation while it loaded up. Now, according to Google Maps, we were about 30 minutes away from a fork in the road, one way heading west out into the Never, another heading towards Mount Coulon. A good thing. We checked as well. So we headed onwards, and sure enough there it was, the fork in the road, no signage indicating which way to go. Just one road slightly more compact than the other and a bit wider as well. So we kept true to the road that we were on and then came to a faint glimmer in the distance, a faint yellow light on the horizon. As we approached the light, it developed into a service station off to the left of the old dirt road, with a storefront that looked completely empty, save for a cash register on a countertop. We were now at the main intersection, signage indicating that to head right was to head towards Collinsville. Left out west into the Never. I came to a stop off to the right shoulder off the road on a dirt patch made by trucks that had obviously turned here. Before I checked the fuel gauge, and it was half a tank, I looked into that old rundown service station, scanning the area for any other signs of life outside of the faint yellow glow of the iridescent tube lights above the old and rusted bouses that looked like they hadn't been used since the 1980s. Then I saw a figure emerging from a back room. It was a frail old woman. Her hair tattered and sort of distressed. It honestly looked like we may have awoken her. The time was now 11:30. She came to a stop inside the abandoned storefront, and just stood there staring at our car. I thought better come forward and ask if there's any chance of fueling up, so I pulled in and rolled down the window. She came outside into the night air, and approached me with a great deal of hesitation. "Excuse me, look, I'm really sorry if I woke you up. We are just wondering if you had any fuel." She stood there glaring and studying me. Her face withered from the harsh outback climate. She then said, "No fuel here. You better leave now." Something felt off about that, the way she spoke. There was a tension between us, I guess, and so I just said, "Okay, thanks, so sorry again. We'll leave now." "Thanks again, and sorry again." So I w the window up and I just got out of there, but we drove around the old pub in the center of what was once the town. It had multiple double road train trucks parked all around it, almost like they were protecting the pub itself with a wall of steel and rubber. In the desolate darkness, a picnic table with a tin roof cover appeared in the right side of this massive loop road. The only road in the entire area was sealed, even if it was rather narrow. As for lighting, well, what lighting? This place clearly was not welcoming after dark. Howbeit for two street lights in the entire area that glowed faintly, only illuminating small patches of the loop road. You definitely wouldn't want to be out here with no headlights. We did the brief tour of all that was out there, though, then made our way back towards the road back home, then eventually made our way back towards the road back home. My partner then said, "Hold up," so I came to a stop again off to the side of the road, back out to Moran Bar. She had just discovered on Google Maps a quicker way back home. Apparently this way would take us out on that old dirt road out west, into the fork in the road. However, as you continue down that road for 50 kilometers, you come to another fork in the road, and taking the leftward track will take us to the Jella Road, which then headed back home. "Good EY," I said to her, so on we went. Thankfully the Mitsubishi ran on an oily rag as well. It was only a little 4-cylinder powerhouse, like my Kia Rio, so I felt confident that we'd make it back on the drive back. It was another long and slow slog. At some points I'd have to slow to like 20 kilometers per hour just to make it around some tight bends and twistings, and turning through the rough and thoroughfare, which went between wide open cattle farming properties. Then at points the bush would thicken around creeks and runoff areas, and you could see a meter off the sides of the road. After taking the leftward turn in what was a slight fork in the road, we made our way homebound, and that was when it happened. Some sort of a large creature came bounding out from the dense bushland, and right in front of our car, I came to an abrupt stop immediately, and there in our headlights was a massive cow. It looked at us, then took off back into the bushland. I was a little bit stunned because that was close, too close. After gathering myself, we went back home, and the rest of the journey was rather mundane, to say the least. I guess the only exception was an interesting stretch of road that had been well sealed and snacked through dense bushland. I was impressed by the craftsmanship of how well compacted it was. Then, suddenly we were back on dirt road again. How was on, and we made it to the Jella Road intersections, with lighting signaling the turn-off to local mines and explosive factories that make the bomb products for them, and so on and so forth, the usual kin of the coal fields. Then we made it home, as the first light of morning emitted from the horizon, pulling into our driveway. We both looked at each other, shrugged as if to signal what the heck was all that about, then got out of the car, and we headed inside. It's a strange feeling out there. It's the desolation, I think, the lack of. I guess it's what really drives the tension. I suppose any moment can be fraught with demise, but it gave me the closure that I needed to put to rest the monsters in my head, because whatever I saw that night when I made that near-fatal misadventure, I guess it's going to remain a mystery for me. Who knows? Maybe that might actually be for the best. We rent a home that, for reasons that no one will explain, is about half of the rental rate in our area. We've been here for about 5 years, and the owner has not raised the rent of dime at all. But strange things consistently happen in the house. Most of them are pretty benign and, I guess, easily dismissed, things being moved around without explanation. Odd noises. A feeling like someone is moving around when rooms are empty, but our dog will suddenly start barking at something that he seems to see. Lately, though, things have become more, or I don't know, like, I guess the word is, aggressive. Several times my wife and I have physically felt something touch us, only to turn and find the room empty. I felt a strong tap on my sternum. My wife had something blow in her ear so deliberate that she actually started crying out of fear, but today was the strangest. So I went to open a door to a stairway down into the basement this morning, and the whole door literally fell onto me. Aside from me, no one in our home is really capable of doing this too. Our kids are way too young. The door was fine last night. I heard nothing during the night. That dog sleeps next to that door as well, so it's weird that they didn't bark or anything really. I just have no explanation, and that's why I'm here. I don't know what to do about any of this. So my question for all of you is, what should we do? So, me, a 32-year-old male, and my brother 28 and male, and our disabled mother all live together in a trailer, about 30 minutes from Nashville, Tennessee. I was wary of moving there at first for the stereotypes. You may hear about trailer parks, but luckily we've had zero issues in the 10 years that we've been here. We have very nice neighbors, well-kept yards, etc. etc. About a week ago, we were finally putting up our Christmas tree, drinking probably too much beer, listening to Christmas music, Christmas spirit in full swing. During our random banter, my brother says, "Oh yeah, I can't believe. I forgot to tell you earlier today at work the owner had to kick out some guy who was acting super creepy." My brother works at the Stalker, at a family-owned little market about a mile from our home. He went on to tell me that this younger-looking guy was pacing the aisles, sometimes standing still for minutes at a time, and not responding when the owner would ask if he needed help finding something. After about 20 minutes of this, the owner asked him to please leave, because he was apparently scaring the customers, and without a word, he left anyway. We continue with our good time hanging ornaments, drinking, getting our mom involved as well with ornaments, not the drinking, of course, and all is good. We wrap up at around 10:30 p.m., help our mom to bed. She's in a wheelchair, and decide that we might as well finish off the ton of beer that we have left and just admire our decked-out tree. Around 11:30, we decided to go on the front porch to share a cigarette, as we usually do when we've tied on a good buzz. My brother opens the door, and almost immediately closes it. I ask what's up, and he says no way. The guy I was telling you about, just like Michael Myers, walked down the street past our house. Dude, I thought that was pretty strange, but I wasn't super concerned. We waited a few minutes and went and smoked, as we did usually, and went back inside. Now my brother and I aren't troublemakers at all, but I'm pretty confident in our ability to defend ourselves if we had to. At this point, these are just thoughts in the back of my mind, though after all, I haven't even seen this guy yet. Anyway, fast forward to about 2 in the morning. We are more than drunk enough to go ahead and call it a night. After one more ciggy, my brother opens the door, and within seconds I hear him say, "Whoa, hey man, you good? Hey buddy, what's up, you good?" I'm in the kitchen at that time, but quickly decided that this doesn't sound right, and rush over to the door. What I see when I get to the open door is a younger man standing on our deck, about 3 feet from our front door. He's pretty tall, about 6 feet 4 inches, and another thing that I noticed is that he looks a lot like Adam Driver, which was a detail my brother jokingly mentioned earlier during tree time. So I'm realizing for the first time that this must be the guy that he's been talking about. One thing my brother must not have got close enough to notice at work, though, was this guy's eyes. I am not exaggerating when I say that I have never seen anything like it. His body language was super menacing, but his eyes were the strangest combination of wide-eyed bewilderment and fury. Like us opening our front door confused him, and also made him very angry. I joined my brother in explaining to him that it's late, and that he should head home, after what I'd say was about 30 seconds of staring. He just walked off without a word. I peeked out of our blinds to make sure that he really left and saw nothing. We both tried to laugh it off and were saying things like, "Well, that was pretty weird, huh?" But it took a while for my adrenaline to sort of taper down. But the thing that I kept thinking to myself that bothered me was those 30 seconds to me felt like he was the one deciding what the next move would be. But what that could have been, I have no idea. I also didn't love that my brother said when he opened the door, he was already standing there. So for how long was he actually there? For we calmed down watching some YouTube videos. In the end, and after about 30 minutes or so, I say to my brother, "Okay, man, let's just go to bed. I'll take one more look at outside to be safe," but I feel like it wasn't really necessary. I open the door and he's back again. The street lights are paced very far apart in our trailer park, but at the edge of our driveway there I see his silhouette probably 50 feet away again, just staring at our front door. I feel I should mention here that he's not there texting or on the phone with someone or anything. He's just standing there. I feel bad in hindsight, because I'm sure this poor guy definitely has mental health issues. But between being drunk and exhausted and the look he gave us earlier, I was just over it. I finally put some bass into my voice and said, "Hey man, you can't just stand in our driveway. You're being creepy, dude. Just please leave. I really don't want to call the cops on you, so just don't make me do it." This seemed to work. His demeanor didn't change at all, but the word cop seemed to do the trick. He turned around and he walked away in the end. I really hope that we handled that well. I understand and empathize with people with mental health problems, and have friends and family who unfortunately suffer from those things too. However, I still cannot shake the feeling that something bad could have happened that night. He didn't finally leave our porch earlier that night until I showed up to the door, essentially making him outnumbered, and even then he still came back afterward. Look, I hope he's okay out there. We haven't seen him, since I also hoped not calling the police wasn't a bad choice, and that he isn't out there with bad intentions on somebody else's front deck at like 2 in the morning. Who lives alone or is elderly, etc. I wish I could have figured out what that was all about, but during every interaction me or my brother had with him that day and night he just never spoke a word, which in the end is perhaps the creepiest part of this whole event. I don't know what it is. I've lived in the same house for the last 18 years, and it's only gotten worse too. I live in an old coal mining town in Pennsylvania. I know that my house is haunted, but I believe that, to be beside the point, something is stalking my family. The first encounter I had was in the early 2010s. I heard my name being called repeatedly from far away, and it sounded like my friend started walking towards home, and turned because I felt like I was being watched. I saw a dark humanoid figure that was at least 7 or 8 feet tall, and upon seeing it I ran home. Things were fairly quiet as far as I can remember up until the last few years, but recently things have been amping up a lot. It started as rustling in the woods and the feeling of being watched. Next came the deer, so many deer. There was one too that I recall seeing multiple times in the same spot for a few days on my way home. That just didn't look right. The most recent encounters has left me researching what to do. You see. 2 nights ago my mom saw a pale white face with glowing eyes pressed up against the front door. She said that she froze in fear and didn't know what to do tonight. I got home after dark and walked toward my house. Seconds after I locked my car, I heard a blood-curdling scream come from the train tracks, followed by a very calm voice yelling helped me very loudly. I froze in fear for a solid 15 seconds just listening. I slowly walked up my porch steps, just listening to 2 different voices screaming at once, one frantic and screeching, while the other was calm, and just called out for help. I yelled in the front door for my mom, because the frantic voice sounded vaguely like my younger sister, but I thought maybe she was messing around. When she came outside, it grew quiet and the frantic voice had stopped. We then heard help me 1 or 2 more times faintly, but they nothing. My sister, she was at a friend's house, and so it was definitely not her. We went to pick up dinner, and there were deer everywhere again. Now this isn't completely uncommon for PA to see a ton of deer, but like I said before, these ones were weird. They stared right at you and they never ran from the car at all, even if they were in the middle of the road too. So someone please help me and tell me what the heck is going on. What are these things? So every summer in my city, me and my friends like to make small campfires in chill, secluded areas, because we don't want to drive an hour to an actual campsite, and pay any campsite fee to do so. These also happen pretty spontaneously, so it's a nice last-minute hang just to do for us. There's this one spot near my house that's located by a river. That's really nice, because no one usually goes there. The only thing to be worried about are bears, though, because living in the Pacific Northwest is challenging like that, and my house, specifically, is located right next to the mountains and the forest. Now, one particular night at 11:00 p.m., I decided to go ahead of my friends and meet them at the spot and set things up early, because I want us to be chilling once they all get here. The spot that I get to has a 2-minute paved walkway I have to go through, and then I have to take a small trail ramping down the right side of the bridge that crosses over the river. Along this paved walkway are 2 lamps located at halfway, and another at the start of the bridge, or the ramp down to the campfire spot. So I park my car at the beginning of the trail on the street and bring my campfire stuff like flashlight, lighter, small firewood, small shovel to dig out the pit, etc. I get to the spot, and it's a small sandy beach kind of embankment on the side of the river with a small waiting area for toddlers with their families during the hot summers. I set up the chair, and I get to dig in the pit, with only my flashlight illuminating where I'm digging. I'm also shoveling the sand right next to me, nowhere near the water, but all of a sudden I hear a loud splash. A splash so loud that it can only come from something equally large like a 2-and-sized rock or something. I'm confused, because I swear that I'm not throwing my sand into the water, even though I'm only a few feet away. I guess I shine my flashlight at the water and I don't see anything, so I kind of just brush it off, thinking I'm just hearing things. But as I keep shoveling a bit more, I hear another loud splash. At this point I think something is falling from above, because logically something must be falling into the water. I point the flashlight above where some trees are above the river, and I don't see anything big enough to make that sort of splash. So as I keep digging with my heart rate kind of going at this point, I hear a rustling past the arch where the bridge goes over the river. I quickly grab my light and shine it towards where I heard the rustling. I call out hello. There's no response in my own head. It was a bear. I should be getting out of there immediately, but there was no bear or signs of anything for that matter. So I tell myself I must just be hearing things now, because I've seen horror movies before and my mind is playing tricks on me, right? But then I hear the noise again, and it clearly sounds like leaves being rustled. So I shine my flashlight over to the area again, and as I focus my eyes towards the illuminated area, I then see the naked back of a man hunched over. I was kind of frozen in anxiety and stress because, honestly, of all the things I was to see, I didn't think that I'd see the naked back of some dude. From the quick analysis my brain could muster up, he looked to be in mid-40s, shaved, not bald and medium-ish build, like a mix between chubby and built, I guess. But as I had my flashlight staying on his back, he started to stand up, and the first thing that I noticed was that he was not wearing any pants either. My next reflex was to start packing up all my stuff and getting the heck out of there, because now I'm piecing in my head that he must have been throwing things into the water to scare or shoo me away. So after using my reflexive deductive skills, I proceeded to speed walk out of there with all of my stuff. I'm carrying all of my things with me and briskly walking up the ramp, and I'm now on the paved path out of the forest. I can feel my heart beating in my chest, and I'm frequently looking back to make sure that I'm not being followed. I am in Crocs, mind you, so I'm hoping that if I have to book it out of here, I'd regret not being in sport mode from the get-go. I make it to the halfway point, though, and a sense of relief starts setting in knowing that I made it safely out of this very scary situation. But as I check behind me for the final time, I see something slowly creeping over the ramp. Is the naked man crawling on all fours, as if he was a primate walking? His head was positioned towards me, looking at me as he made his way to the middle of the paved walkway. He slowly then gets up from his stance and starts standing on his feet and positions his body to face me. After setting himself into this new position, the man then starts running towards me. Well, at that, I absolutely booked it. I ran as hard and as fast as I could down that path. My flashlight jumped out of my pocket at one point and I lost it, but I didn't care, because a whole naked man was chasing me at 11:00 p.m. at night in a secluded forest. I looked back for a split second and the man was still running towards me, still completely naked. He could have my flashlight for all I cared at that moment, and I wanted to make it out of this situation alive. I finally made it out of the forest and I run to my car, which is only 30 feet away from the end of the forest. I desperately get to my car, and like a classic horror movie, I fumble with trying to get my key fob to unlock my car, and yes, I actually dropped my keys and quickly think to myself, I'm actually going to die, but I brushed the thought off and picked them up. I finally get a hold of my fob, properly unlock my doors and throw my things into the back seat before quickly getting into the driver's seat. This felt like an eternity, but in hindsight was most likely about 6 seconds altogether. As I try to guide my key into the ignition, I am fixated on the end of the paved path that I was just at a few seconds ago, waiting to see if the naked man was still coming. I feel my key to go into the ignition, and I switch my sights onto the road in front of me, and then I zoom out of the area as fast as I could. As I drive away, and I'm a good 30 seconds from the location of the horror that just took place, I get a call on my phone. It was my friends calling me asking if I'd made it to the spot yet, and all I say to them is, guys, do I have a crazy story to tell you? They pull up to my house because again it was actually decently close to the campfire area, and I told them the whole story the way that I told it just now. They swear that it was none of them trying to prank me or anything like that too, and I also knew none of them would try to full sprint at me with their dong out like that. But as we are just talking out in front of my house, there's a college student, who looks like he was walking home, that's going towards the direction of where I encountered the naked man. I just yelled out to him, hey man, be careful. There's a naked guy that was chasing me by the bridge that crosses over the river. There he responds saying, "Oh really? I got to go over the bridge to go home." All I tell him is good luck, man. The next day, I reported it to the police by phone, but they sent over an officer so I could tell them in person and show them where the area that I saw these things was at. When we went to see where I initially saw the man's back hunched over, they said that they didn't see any trace of anyone being there previously, but the officer did say that they would make a note of it anyways in case it ever happens again. Some friends say that it was a skinwalker. Others say, more realistically, that it's either a homeless, mentally ill or drunk or high person. If you can't get enough of these bone-chilling stories, don't forget to subscribe for more.